Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our Cognitive Systems Speaker Series call this morning. This is Diane Fodell. I'm pleased to introduce Kurt VanLehn, who is the Diane and Gary Tooker Chair for Effective Education in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math in the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering at Arizona State University. Kurt has a PhD from MIT. He was a postdoc at BBN and Xerox PARC. He has been on the faculty of Carnegie Mellon University, the University of Pittsburgh, and is now at Arizona State University. He founded and co-founded two large NSF research centers. He has published over 125 peer-reviewed publications. He's a fellow in the Cognitive Science Society and is on the editorial boards of Cognition and Instruction and the International Journal of Artificial Intelligence in Education. Dr. VanLehn's research focuses on intelligent tutoring systems, classroom orchestration systems, and other intelligent interactive instructional technology. Thank you very much for being our presenter today, Kurt, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I hope I can present a little bit of work on a classroom orchestration system, and you can figure out what that means from this talk. So this is about a system called Formative Assessment with Computational Technology, or FACT. It's a collaboration among a lot of people who are listed on this first slide. And I'm part of the Cascade Center at ASU, which is about data, making sense of it, simulating, predicting, validating, interpreting, acting on it. And this is also a closed-loop system like the loop you see there. But the data's not so big yet. We're getting there. So what's the problem we're looking at? Can teachers circulate among students, student groups with the computers actually helping them? So here's a bunch of kids working on tablets in groups and the teacher's circulating. You see that all the time. And that's a different problem than having individual students work on tablets. Current intelligent tutoring systems handle that pretty well. Our problem is groups. So when students work collaboratively in groups on a joint project, how can tablets help the teacher? So in middle school, and there's a lot of group work, somewhat less in high school, and very little in college, unfortunately. So our research problem is, given a successful content, a bunch of formative assessments based on paper that unfortunately require a lot of analysis from the teacher, and it's often required in real time, how can we develop computer-based analysis methods and a media system that will allow those methods to take input from the teachers and give output to the teachers? And our criteria for success is the impact on the students, they learn, and on the teachers, they also learn. And we want to see the classroom processes change. Just a word about this term, formative assessment. It's really not assessment in the sense of like a multiple choice test. What it means is a diagnosis of what's going on in your process, in this case a classroom process, along with feedback to that process that helps guide it in directions that you would like it to see it go. So it's really a feedback process. It's a type of instruction advocated by Black and Williams that's become very popular. Okay, so our research problem. I'm going to go about that in detail, give a lot of description of that, and then talk about the solution. So the lessons we're working with are called classroom challenges. They're developed over about 10 years by the Mathematics Assessment Project, which is Hugh Burkhart, Alan Schoenfeld, and a bunch of other folks. They're intentionally designed to address the Common Core state standards of mathematics. There's approximately 100 of these classroom challenges available from grades 6 through 10. They're all about math. Each classroom challenge takes about 100 minutes to enact, so a couple class periods. And they're very widely used despite a lack of a publisher. There's been over 5 million downloads so far. There was a positive evaluation in about 40 school districts in the state of Kentucky, which turns out these classroom challenges do raise the state test scores, even though you only use them a few times a year. So that's all good. What do they look like? Well, they're spread over several days, typically a little bit of one day where you do what's called the pre-assessment. Students work for about 15 minutes on that. And then the next day they come back to class and the teacher goes over their pre-assessment work with them and then breaks them into small groups where they work on a really hard problem for a while. They don't usually solve it, but they get a long ways. And then the teacher discusses it with them and it's a whole class. And then the teacher hands out a bunch of sample solutions, which are solutions to the same problem, but usually not correct solutions. And the students gather in their groups to critique those solutions. And that exposes them to some mathematics that they might not otherwise have been exposed to. When that's all over with, the teacher gives them back the pre-assessment and asks them to solve it again fresh. And that's a way to find out, both for the teacher's benefit and the students, how much they learned over that classroom challenge. So that's a classroom challenge. Here's one of them. This is one of my favorites from high school. It says, determine if 2,000 descendants in 18 months is realistic. And they're looking at this poster. It's about cats, right? And so below there in the bullets is a summary of a couple paragraph long text that indicates the relevant information. Length of pregnancy is 2 months. Age when a cat can first get pregnant is 4. Number of litters a year is 3. Number of kittens per litter is 4 to 6. Age at which your cat can no longer have kittens is 10. Okay, so that's the problem. Figure out if 2,000 descendants is reasonable. Okay, so here's what a teacher might see when the teacher walks over to a group. Looking at this now, the kids have concluded that a cat could have 24 kittens, so 2,000 is not realistic. So one's first question might be, where did that 24 come from? Looking at this, you can sort of see, well, it's probably that 6 plus that plus that. Oh, you can't see my, probably can't see my mouse. Okay, so there's the word 6 written 4 times, and that's probably where the 24 came. Now below that you see the constraints, so that helps you try and figure out what's going on. But to save time, I've sort of made it into the slides here. So that length of pregnancy, that's probably what the little P on top of the 2-month-long arrow is there, okay? And that 6, that's probably where the 6s are come from. Those vertical arrows are probably pregnancies, litters being born. And this age at which the female cat can first get pregnant, that's probably corresponds to the arrow that's 4 months long. Okay, so you can sort of see that these kids have mapped the constraints onto this diagram. And here's the one about 3 litters per year. All right, so not bad. Now, what would you say? Well, the teacher's manual recommends that in this case that the teachers say, well, these kittens here, this litter, will they grow up and have kittens, or are you assuming they're all male? Please write down your assumptions. I mean, if they were all male, this would be reasonable, 24 cats. Okay, but what's really cool about this one is there was this 2-month wait period that the kid figured out had to be there. That's beautiful. So the teacher's formative assessment decisions are always along the lines of, what should I say to help this particular student or group engage with the math? And is there something that these folks have done that I can use with my whole class? And they have to do that instantly. And when they walk over, they have to look at that picture and figure out what to say, okay? Get it? So you're a teacher. What would you say if you saw this? Wow, that's not too hard to figure out what's going on. The kid just multiplied everything in the problem statement. What about this? Or what about this? So you can see this gets really hard. So can the computer perceive the kid's derivations so that it can do that analysis? And once it's figured out what the students are doing, can it help the teachers somehow without disrupting the whole class? Okay, so that's the problem. So I've described the research problem, which is the computer should do analyses that help the teacher figure out what's going on with the problem solutions and give that advice to the teacher. So how are we doing on that so far? Well, fact is what's called a centaur these days. It's a combination of a computer and human that are acting as nearly equal partners. And the term was coined by Gary Kasparov for chess centaurs, which are world champions nowadays. They consist of both human chess experts and chess programs. Both are analyzing possible moves. The humans make the final decision. They have to do it fast in freestyle chess and slow in correspondence chess. Well, a classroom centaur, that's a new name, they're also got 2 agents, the humans and the computer, and they're analyzing possible advice to give to students. And the human teacher makes the final decision, and this either has to be done very fast as the teacher is strolling around the groups in the classroom, or in the evenings when the teacher is going over the students' work. So what FACT does is it replaces the posters that students normally work on. So here we have up in the upper left a group of students working on a poster with little cards and glue sticks and markers and stuff. And down on the lower right, the kids are working on FACT on some tablets. And they're manipulating the same cards and writing on the same poster board. It's just all electronic. So here's an example of what the kids would be doing. This is a screenshot from the Android version of FACT. Now, it's important to know that every student has their own tablet, and when they're working in a group, they're sharing the access to the same poster. They might scroll on Zoom and see different parts of it, but when they write, the other students see it. So they've got some cards here, some beige cards, which they are asking them to write some equations. Once they've written the equations, they're supposed to place the blue cards next to the equation they wrote. But a lot of students use the space to the right for scratch work, and typically the kids choose different colors so they can tell who's writing what. Okay, so it's a very simple system from the student's point of view. That's kind of all there is. From the teacher's point of view, they're carrying around a tablet, and it has a dashboard on it. And their dashboard shows little cards for every student. And we've got students who are working alone up above the dotted line, and then we have groups below the dotted line. The green means that they're in sync. They're working on the right poster. Orange means they're not in sync. They need to be a little help to get caught up with the class. Gray means that the tablet's not online. It's lost its heartbeat, and probably the students have accidentally turned it off. So you get a little bit of heads-up situation awareness from this device. Another thing that the teachers find really helpful is when they press this talk button, all the student tablets pause, and a little pop-up says eyes on teacher. That is much more effective than waving your hands and screaming. They have this project button, which causes whatever's on the teacher's screen to now be shown on the digital classroom projector or the smart board in the classroom. When they tap on a student, did I show you this? I don't think I did. When they tap on one of those, come back here. Oh, it went all the way to the end. Right, when they tap on one of these card buttons for the student, they see the student screen. So when they tap on the project button, they're now projecting a student screen, and that makes it a lot easier for students to give presentations of their work to the whole class. So this is the activity screen so that the teacher can advance the whole class as a group to the next activity. Each row there corresponds to an activity with little data to help the teacher decide which one to do. So here's a picture of one of our teachers wandering around a classroom carrying FACT in his right hand while he points with his left to a tablet the teachers are doing. He has peeked at that group. He's obviously too far away from the tablet screen to read anything in it. That's why he's peeking, so he can read whatever he needs to read off the tablet in his right hand. We do video recordings. You can see one of our cameras there so that we get data for formative assessment, for formative evaluation, so we can improve the system. So this is the part of the system that we're working on now, and this is real tentative. What we're doing now is going to change probably. So when FACT decides that there's something worth telling the teacher about, it goes through this four-step cycle of alerting the teacher, letting the teacher peeks, then previews, and then sends. So alerting means one of the cards goes red. Then the students, when the teacher peeks at that student's screen, sees the student's screen, but overlaid on it is this red rectangle along with a big I button. Now, the red rectangle is indicating what part of the student product here, in this case, a bunch of cards put together in rows on a table, what part of that is worth talking about, what's interesting about that. Now, typically when the teachers see that, if they're experienced teachers, that's sufficient and they know exactly what to do. But if they're a novice teacher just learning this stuff, then they'll tap on the I icon, and they'll see what the annotation is that FACT is suggesting. And this is going to help the teacher learn how to be a better teacher for this particular classroom challenge. Now, if you look at these questions, how far is Tom away from home when he starts? How far is Tom away from home when he finishes? What exactly does the label on the vertical axis say? These are not hints in the traditional sense that guide the students towards a correct answer. They're basically intended to get the students to think more deeply about the math here, okay? And that's an important characteristic of all the formative assessments. It's not about correctness. They're trying to change the classroom contract away from a model where the teacher's job is to correct work and to explain things to the students, and the student's job is to memorize stuff. That's not how the classroom challenges work. The teacher is basically a guide on the side. They're trying to help the students pursue whatever line of mathematical investigation seems right to the students. So these questions are intended to do just that. When the teacher presses the send button, this particular piece of advice will go out to the student. If the teacher doesn't like it, they can press delete, or they can just leave it alone and decide later. So those are the buttons at the bottom. When they press send, a teacher-colored card pops up on the student screen with the advice that the teacher just gave the student. So that's our current way of giving advice directly to students. Sometimes the whole class has a particular issue, in which case it's worth saying something to the class as a whole. When fact detects that, then it puts an alert up here on the teacher's dashboard. Okay? So the current status of FACT is, as software, we've got a current version which is in Android. It's stable, pretty much bug-free, but it requires this Samsung Galaxy Note 10 tablet, which is obsolete, not being made anymore. We did that basically so that to take care of all the problems of platform independence and just concentrate on the interesting parts of the software. But now we're ready to go with a multi-platform solution, so we've got a web app that's almost ready. Our analytic power is kind of feeble right now. We've got product detectors for the card-moving lessons, and those are working well, but we need product detectors for the handwriting lessons. That means we have to do handwriting recognition, which we're doing with a commercial product, and then we have to do natural language processing, which we will do with a toolkit called Mallet. And then we have our harder problem, which is we need process detectors. They basically look at the log data as it comes in and detect situations that are worth talking about. But probably, you know, as soon as we get a lot of detectors firing, we're going to have the what's called the whack-a-mole problem, which is we got hundreds of detectors firing. You just don't want to react to all of them. That would be like playing the game whack-a-mole at the carnival. So we have to have policies for when to alert teachers. And so we've explored two policies, but neither have been particularly good so far. We need a lot more explanation. And we haven't even thought about or asked the teachers about what their policies should be for sending alerts directly to the teacher. Right now we're engaged in formative evaluations, which means doing classroom trials, recording videos, analyzing the videos, figuring out how the software should be changed. Eventually, we plan to do a summative evaluation where we see whether or not learning gains for both the teachers and the students are detectable. But we don't have funding for that right now, so we're working on it. So our take-home points here are that we've got a complex, open-ended, collaborative reasoning like these ones in the Classroom Challenge, and they're becoming more and more common in classrooms. And when you got that kind of reasoning going on with the students, then the teachers have this big analytic problem. And it doesn't matter how experienced a teacher you are, you still have this big analytic problem. So what can we do about that? One is create Centaurs. Let the computers somehow perceive the student's reasoning without disrupting the classroom and analyze this complex handwritten stuff. But the key issue is, how can we do this assisting but not overwhelming the teachers? So that's where we're at right now. And that's the end of the talk. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Audience, please press *1 to unmute your line and ask questions. And Kurt, you said that this teacher activity screen, that's available today or will be available as a web app soon?
The whole system will be available as a web app soon. But by soon, I mean we'll trial it in schools starting in July. We probably will not release it to the public until, because it takes quite a while to get the bugs and the design issues straightened out. Probably won't be available to the public until early next year.
It looks incredible to me. My children are in their 20s now. I wish something like this would have been available when they were in school, because they would have loved it.
Well, it's the thing to know about this, though, is it fits into the overall classroom culture of a math class, which has got still has a lot of drill and practice, and intelligent tutoring systems are just fine for that, and people should continue using them. But now a modern math class has more and more of this group collaborative, complicated reasoning going on. And back when I was in school, there was hardly any of that. So maybe when your kids were in school, they had a moderate amount. But I think it's growing. So tools like this are needed more often.
Hi, I was wondering, and I know the challenge, I mean, there's obvious challenges in creating these Centaurs. Have you also looked at, given that you've got a computer system here, the ability to bring in like aides to complement the teacher and work with the students instead of being just the one teacher? You know, you can kind of expand that with some aides that allow them to interact with the students on behalf of the teacher. and do some of what the Centaur would do, for example?
Yes. We can do that, and we've thought about that in other systems. But one of the things that we found is that the teacher has a special authority, and the kids basically just pay much more attention to the teacher than they do to pop-up agents. So we're probably going to make this look like it's always the teacher sending things to the student, even when it's just the system following a policy and sending something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I'm not sure the students would necessarily know if it's the teacher or if it's the computer system or if it's somebody else that actually was trying to help them.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, they would say the system helping them. You see what I mean?
Well, I must say there are advantages to having the system rather than the teacher provide help because it provides a degree of anonymity that some students prefer. But since this is all in a group context with the teacher walking around, it's not a remote learning type situation. There's just really no anonymity. You can't hide. So I don't think we'll probably go with the agent just because of the sort of the social aspects.
Okay. It is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. The whole idea of a Centaur, though, is it's really tricky. It's hard to get it right.
Hey, Kurt, this is fascinating work. Something that you mentioned earlier about students working together in groups in middle school and then less in high school and then even less like in college, that kind of surprised me. Why do you think that is, and why isn't it changing? Because isn't that the opposite of what we really want?
Yeah, it's the opposite of what we really want. Thank goodness it is changing. I don't think it's changing fast enough. Why is it that I wouldn't want to speculate in a group setting about that? You have to get me a beer before I'll speculate on that one.
Okay.
But I must say, though, that forward-looking universities are trying to change this. So at Arizona State, we have this project. It's in its 4th year now, called the Adaptive Gen Ed Project, where the whole freshman year, all the large, 1,000-person classes are being converted to blended classes where all of the lectures are done offline, and the face-to-face means of the class is all group work with these big, complicated problems. So we're trying to change that so there's actually more group work in college than there is in high school. Now, that means so our kind of stuff was going to be helpful in those settings, but we haven't actually tried it in those settings yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, are you able to press *1? Scott McLeod had a question.
I could see the type in. Maybe he could type it if he can't talk.
How about if I try to unmute everybody? So hang on a second. Scott, can you try to say something now? Maybe press *1 again or type your question in the chat. I'm sorry that's not working. Are there other questions for Kurt?
He's typing, he says.
Okay. So if other people are going to ask a question, since I unmuted all your lines, if you had pressed *1 before, you may have to press it again. There we go.
Okay, Scott says, appreciating your emphasis on cognitive agents in the group context. Are you focusing on specific
group, probably, or population?
Probably. Oh, population, I'll bet, right. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. We're testing in 8th grade math classes, which is kind of a sweet spot because they're just at the end of middle school and they have enough math that the analysis problems are challenging for the computer because they're doing slightly more challenging problems than the 7th and 6th graders are doing. However, middle school is a little bit easier to get volunteers from, because it's less time stressed compared to the high school classes, which are trying very hard to make the students come up for the state tests. So it's a good place for us to do this kind of work. Eventually, we'd like to have the system running all over the grade levels, all the way from 6th through 10th, but that'll take a time to get there. Different languages on MIT High School, looking for classes for experimental approaches, World University and High School. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool online schools where this could work. Once we have the web app going, there's nothing to prevent someone from using this as a remote tool. In particular, because all the students can work easily in groups, and in an online school they just do that routinely. This is going to fit right into that. The only issue is that we don't carry audio at the same time, so they'd have to have a separate audio system, but I think that's a minor issue. So I would look forward to working in that kind of a setting, but the funding agencies, frankly, are not interested in funding work for online schools. They're only interested in funding work for the face-to-face, so that's why we do that. Okay, Tim says, can you say a few words on the background domain knowledge you need and how you represent and use it? Yeah, there's, you're not going to like this answer, but basically it's all handwritten detectors right now, which each detector detects a particular product pattern, arrangement of cards, a particular set of keywords that appear in some handwritten text. And when the detector detects that, it fires an alert, and the alert has some extra information on it about the priority, and that's determined in part by the timing, when this appeared in the problem solving, and partly by how many other alerts are from that particular group or student. So it's all handwritten pedagogical knowledge right now. We're looking forward to a day when we can sort of calibrate some of those detectors using data, but we don't have enough data to do that now reliably. So it's all pedagogical knowledge, and it's bound up in the particular classroom challenges. So a set of detectors for that cat problem are going to be very different than the set of detectors for that algebra equation problem that I showed you. So that's the part that's a little bit discouraging. We don't see any way around that. So for each of those 100 classroom challenges, we're going to have a lot of engineering in order to get the detectors for each classroom challenge. They all need their own. Okay, so Kalman says, can you please provide more details of the type of analysis that Centaur is doing? Yeah, what we've done so far is the card arrangement detectors, and those are literally just looking at pairs of cards, and for each possible pair of cards, because there's only like 10 cards of each type in one particular CC, so there's 100 possible pairs. So that for each possible pair, we have a detector which usually says this is fine, but some of them say this needs to be talked about, and here's what I would suggest saying. So that's the type of analysis that we currently are doing. When the handwriting stuff is up and running better than it is now, we take a particular card. We use MyScript, which is a handwriting recognition program, to convert the handwritten text into handwriting into text. Then we convert that into a bag of words, run stats comparing that bag of words to the expected bags of words, and on the basis of that, raise an alert or not. So that's how we'll analyze the handwriting. For the process type of data, we've got log data coming in, and we analyze that for particular patterns. So one pattern that is going to be easy for us is doodling. When the students go off task, they typically just doodle on the computer, and you can tell what doodling is pretty easily because it's fast, has a lot of connected strokes, and then they almost always erase it. So when we see that, we know they're off task, and that'll be one process detector. Another process detector is when they are moving things and making decisions without discussing things. So if you see like card placements occurring about once every 5 seconds, then they're not explaining things to each other. So those are some of the process detectors that we're going to have to develop. So those are sort of our current ideas about how to do the analysis. Okay.
There's a couple more questions, but, you know, we're out of time, so can I ask that you take your questions to the LinkedIn discussion group? I'll send you a link, Kurt, and there may be some more discussion and questions there. But I just want to thank you very much for being our presenter. This is excellent. I love this talk. I was a math teacher, a high school math teacher for a while. This would have been an amazing tool to have. So thank you, audience, for being here. We'll see you next week. We have Ken Forbes from Northwestern who's going to talk to us. Kurt, thank you very much for being our presenter today.
Okay, you're going to email me that link, right?
Yep, I'll do it right now.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.